we should probably just hop into it. Because
absolutely.
There's some interesting things afoot, everyone. So let's kick it off. All right.
Go for it.
9.1.5 obviously is a thing. It is on the PTR. The last stream we talked about Blizzard's initial announcement of it. Since then, there were a few updates, though. They basically just had a big blue post confirming the likes of Legendary Scrapping, Legion Time Walking being a thing, improved Group Finder, Threads of Fate changes, Void Elf changes, PvP ranks, Honor Gear scaling, some quality of life features, stuff like that. Also, the PTR is actually out. Things have been data mined. So what I think we should do is first talk about the new data mining. Then we should talk about the new business model between WoW and Hearthstone, and then maybe just a quick rundown of the other 9.1.5 stuff so that people are are aware of what's going on.
Yep, it is certainly interesting having actually logged into the PTR, and even though a substantial amount of stuff that they have announced isn't in this build, it's still, there's so much in the build that's like smaller things to look at and play around with that is actually quite nice. The entire setup is substantially better than I remember previous PTRs being. To be fair, I wasn't on the 9.1 PTR all that much, but it's, you can log in. It's just there are NPCs everywhere taking you to some different places, selling you everything you're liable to need within reason. So it is, well put together.
Nice. And that especially has been a problem with past Shadowlands PTRs because, I mean, all the people trying to do like class and conduit testing in 9.1 and that being fun. So supposedly that's better. All right. We should talk about the new stuff. Number 1. Would you like to know a possible release date for patch 9.1.5? Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, but we shouldn't necessarily put a massive amount of stock into this.
Of course.
For sure. But the next Time Walking event is scheduled for November 2nd. And it ends November 16th, lasting 2 weeks. Blizzard told us that Legion Time Walking, the first time it comes out, would last for 2 weeks. Now that's in the in-game calendar. So does that mean that patch 9.1.5 will be out by the 2nd of November 2021? Well, patch 9.0.5 lasted 1 month on the PTR from February 9th to March 9th. However, while 9.1.5, I think, it's a 0.5 patch, but it's way larger than 9.0.5. Way larger. So, I would not at all be surprised if this patch had roughly a 2-month PTR, maybe a little smidge faster, and maybe it comes out a week before the Legion Time Walking, and bam, you get that. So, late October is when I'm going to say I think this patch will come out. I think it could be late October. But if I was going to say something, I think it would be that, especially because this is a patch that really doesn't seem like it's got, other than the Legion stuff, content.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of content, it's the Legion stuff that is the thing to do. But, it's not like how in Battle for Azeroth we had 0.5 patches unlock storylines, like with 8.1.5 that brought us all of that Crucible of Storms lead-in content. That stuff doesn't seem to be happening here. This is, I think, straight up systems and changes, which is absolutely, unfortunately, that is a step down over what we got in BFA. And BFA was a step down over what a 0.5 patch was in Legion. So that's obviously a downside, but I think it's a state where Legion needs both content and systems. If we can't have them both in a patch, we may as well have smart reuse of content that's going to create gameplay that will feel novel to people and, systemic changes that we should have had at launch. But hey, I'll take them. Absolutely.
Yeah. From a personal perspective, I will definitely engage in Legion Time Walking at least a little bit because I love Legion Mythic Plus quite a lot. Although doing it as Holy Paladin instead of Prop Paladin will be weird. But I think that this patch to me is more of a dry run for 9.2. That's how I'm kind of thinking about it. That's how I'm treating it. I'm thinking, will this let me get alts up to speed if I do want to play something other than Holy Paladin in 9.2? Because I've not been having the best time. It's a great spec, but I've not been having the best time personally in Sanctum. So this is basically a dry run for 9.2 as far as I'm concerned. And I really, really hope that this 2-month PTR period, if it is going to be ultimately a 2-month PTR, that it gives lots and lots of time for feedback. Because 1 month, basically, given how they roll out features, doesn't give much time. But 2 months is fine. And I think with the idea that they're actually listening now, or at least attempting to listen more than before, then this is the perfect time for everyone to jump in and go, hello, please, this is what we genuinely think. This is what we feel. Can we have some movement and shaking in and around the stuff?
And it's going to be a painful time for Blizzard because they're making good moves here, but at the same rate, I can't forget about the past. So, like Ian, I had a tweet reply to Ian that was basically, but that whole Covenant power thing is a load of bullshit. You could have had your cake and ate it too at launch, and everyone would have been happier. Just that thing. Nobody really seems to buy the excuse and the wording that they had. Ian had a tweet saying the wording wasn't ideal or whatever in that blue post.
Well, that's true.
But it's been interesting because even the likes say Josh Augustine, who's coming off, I think, very, very well on Twitter.
It certainly is.
And you look at the replies, and so many of them are just like, well, yeah, we don't believe you. We don't trust you. You didn't listen to us for years. Why should we think you will now? And I think it's just going to be a very interesting thing. That like sudden realization, probably for a lot of people at Blizz, where they're actually doing the right thing. They're really trying, and maybe this will reinforce how much faith they really lost in the players. Where I really don't think 9.15 is going to be enough. I think we need to see the same attitude for 9.15, 9.2, 9.2.5, and 10.0. And then if 10.0 is good, then people could possibly be actually won back. But till then, it's like, how can you trust these? I mean, I think for a lot of people's point, it's like, how can you trust some of their statements and their things when, up until recently, like Ian was doing an interview with Preach, like defending loads of this shit. Which, I mean, even it's that weird thing where maybe they're painted into a corner. Like, if I remember correctly, Ian kind of defended the old school, the consumable conduits in his interview with me. And then a week after it was changed. So it's just that weird thing of it's a very long road to earning back people's respect. I'm glad they're doing all of this. But yeah, it's just interesting seeing them tweeting and, even like our videos, which, they've been covering what has been happening. What has been happening is obviously positive. And even with me including a lot of, people's concerns and skepticisms, I'm still getting comments saying your 9.1.5 videos, all chill. I'm getting some comments of that. And, a lot of other comments are like, well, these are all great changes, but sorry, too little, too late, or sorry, don't trust them. Like, it was I remember you sent me a message in Slack after we published that one yesterday. And it's just like, yeah, man, wow. This is a first step. It's a first step, but the foot is still in the air and it's yet to be planted. Right, and where it's going, and even at that early stage, there's still a lot of skepticism out there.
Yeah, well, I actually have. This is something about the date because a lot of people have been mentioning. And just to clear up one question, when I was talking about Prot and Holy, it was I played Prot Paladin in Legion, so going back to that as a different spec would be weird. That's what I meant. But people are saying about November. What other big MMO events happening in November? Gee, I wonder. Final Fantasy
couldn't be Endwalker now.
Going to the moon. So we're going to the moon on the 19th for early access and the 23rd. For actual full access.
They'll have to do this before.
So that's the thing. This patch is, obviously it's preliminary that event's set up there, but it is set up there. It is set to run 2 weeks. So someone was playing with it. Someone manually put that in. Obviously they know it'll be looked at. So it doesn't mean anything. But the point is that if they are actually planning to release this late October, then that means they have nothing to directly compete with Endwalker. And I think that is a telling sign of Blizzard going, we can't compete.
You literally can't.
We can't compete. We need to have people playing our game, giving feedback, seeing what Legion Time Walking's like before they all go play other game.
Yeah, in my opinion, the best way the Blizzard developers can serve the World of Warcraft player base is to give them a sampling of a good experience and a positive future, and then let them go and play another game that right now is... I think it's just going to be more fun in almost every level because they screwed the pooch with Shadowlands. Like, I don't think it's a controversial thing to say that Endwalker probably will be better than Shadowlands.
I mean, right? it would take a miracle for it not to be.
Yeah, right. So in that case, don't try to strong arm in people into doing, just admit where you are. In which case, like, and I don't really say this as a slight. If this is the case that it's, time walking, up until, I mean, okay, it does clip the early access for Endwalker, but it's
It
before.
doesn't if it's 2 weeks.
When's early
Yeah,
access is the 19th.
Yeah, the 19th. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's very much just, hey, log in, here's a bunch of excellent changes, here's Legion time walking, have a blast with it. That's really all we've got. So you go play Endwalker if you want, or whatever, Guild Wars or anything.
Yep.
And then let the people come back whenever patch 9.2 is there, because it's far better that people have a lot of fun in another MMO. The last experience, the last memory they have of playing WoW is a more positive one. That means whenever 9.2 gets announced and stuff, people will be sort of more able to engage with it in a way where, more positive.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, okay, you can say that we'll talk about both of these topics individually later, but one topic is the Hearthstone business model where they're going 6-month subs now. It gets so much more. So there is that, which does.
So I try to divorce the devs from the biz.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of like overall Blizzard approach, because I imagine the marketing people had a say in a release date as well. I imagine they had all these conversations among multidiscipline teams. So there is that angle of there is the strong arming coming from that aspect, but there's also it seems that based on a couple of other things around the other bundles that we've seen data mined, is that they're not actually they're going to wait until they have a strong foot to put down before they push it again, which means I think they kind of know, because obviously you'll have 6-month subs starting to expire from around June time, by around December time, but then at least as far as we can tell, the next things they have planned are around February time or late January, which kind of means they are. I feel like there's a little bit of them going, no, we have to behave for a second here.
Yeah,
maybe
late Jan Feb is what it's awful.
Yeah,
the 9.2 is this goddamn late.
Yeah,
but we're thinking late January, February for 9.2.
Yeah, which I mean, I think considering how this patch actually goes, like you say, the content is Legion time walking. That ends before Endwalker comes out. That ends in the middle of November, which means when does 9.2 PTR come up? Does it come up January? Does it come up, early December, something like that? Maybe not because of working over Christmas or stuff like that.
See, that's a really large problem, because 9.2 is going to have a 2-month PTR, and oh wow. Look, there's a chance we're not dealing with... I actually think there's a reasonably high chance we're not dealing with 6 months between major patches, or 7 months like we would have been used to in the past with, a patch in between. If this is going to be more an 8 or 9 month affair, let's just say it's an 8 month, because... Yeah, well, let's just say it's an 8 month for this patch, in which case 29th of June was 9.1.
Yeah,
so basically end of June. So, maybe it's late Feb or March. Because, as you say, yeah, if PTR comes out like the 3rd of January, assuming they don't make PTR, I mean, what would be ideal is PTR late November, because then you could at least be a little bit more close to a Visions of N'Zoth style cadence. But given that the 9.15 PTR was so late after the 9.1 release, as compared to the PTR cycle of the Legion expansion, that does make me think it's a little bit longer of a wait. And interesting to puzzle out.
And honestly, the longer the wait, the better, because I will, as a consumer, I will not tolerate them throwing stuff that's not finished again. The next time we get a patch that releases like 9.1 does, I will cut all of my involvement to the game likely until they can seriously improve, because I kind of personally 1 foot out the door at the minute.
It's like Blizz people, if you thought we were a little bit harsh on you for the launch date of 9.1, you don't even know what harsh is. If 9.2 ends up being just of a similarly low quality, I would say, in terms of 9.2 needs to have better content than 9.1, absolutely. But yeah, we need things like our raid team not having probably 80 minutes or between 60 and 80 minutes of wipes on Fatescribe, because lag means that the things don't work while people in our raid group have the floor despawn. You just can't release that again and ask for people's money, right? So fuck it. There's with there being so many other games to play, right, you let us play Endwalker, and we'll give you a few more months at 9.2 to make sure it's really ready.
Basically, yeah.
And you know what? Maybe we'll just have to take a whole bunch of stakes and pitchforks and torches and take them to whatever corporate overlords would have you, pump the patch out early. Now, that said, if the patch was always going to be a Q1 2022, calendar 2022, then, it gives them anywhere between January and March.
Yeah.
Right? So, second half of March, I would support second half of March for a 9.2 because that would give them more time. They evidently needed it based on patch 9.1, which itself was late anyway.
Yeah.
So they definitely need more time. I hope they can push for that. And if it falls within the same quarter and a patch performance is, you could maybe even argue that spreading the launch bump of a patch out over 2 quarters would be super ideal for the business types. So maybe there's even a reality where what's best for the players, given that they really need to hit a higher level of quality of release than with 9.1, maybe it's better for both players and investors if it's later on in Q1 2021.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the that's one of the things that I find interesting about the release date of 9.1. They absolutely hit it on the last feasible day of Q2.
They did, yeah.
Which, if someone logs in on the last day of June and then the first day of July, then they are 2 MAUs.
Yeah.
Or, technically, they're not, because the way they represent MAUs is average over 3 months usually, as opposed to, you don't count directly. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're split across 2 of those months, which means you're just, they get to use you as a number because they released it a little bit early. So it's a case of, as you're saying, makes more sense. Makes more sense.
Yeah, so that's some thoughts on release dates and what should happen. I think what we need is systems to be good, and then we need the level of polish and quality to be good. On the server side, I have noticed improvements. They did make their big post about that. Yep. The most recent time I went to fight the world boss, it actually worked. Now, the frame rate wasn't great. And there was 1 or 2 things felt odd, but it worked way better than the previous times where I did it, where the game was literally unplayable. Yeah. You could barely get a spell off because, you'd hit the button, nothing would happen, and they would all just chunk up. So, if those server issues are fixed and they get a little bit longer than normal to actually dial in the quality of execution of this patch, because I think 9.1 suffered from both quality of ideas and quality of execution. So if we can, if we finally knocked it into their head that a lot of their ideas are bad, regarding shards of domination, and they don't make those mistakes, they have a little bit more time for quality of execution, and then whatever server-side changes they made that they recently discussed regarding Sylvanas, if those are then made, then, I don't know if it's copium talking, but maybe that has us, going in a better direction. That's totally what we want.
I think there is a low level of copium going on in general with these changes. Because, they've basically pumped copium into the water supply in an extent. Not to say it's entirely in a negative sense, but it is literally call copium, call it a very, very vague sliver of hope, possibly, but who knows? Who knows what it is?
They've tried to put a lot in, and we've all had a resistance built up to it because of the amount of betrayal we've experienced from the team.
That's exactly it.
Over the last, over the last 2 expansions.
I think one last note on the to see people bring it up in chat. 9.2, if it releases in March, there's decent incentive for the marketing team to let that through as well, because that's around when FF6.1 will drop. So they've got that thing of, we maybe can't fight Endwalker release with 9.1.5, obviously, but maybe, just maybe, if 9.2 is good enough, it'll grab some people from 6.1. As to whether that's true, have to see, but it's a way for them to look at it.
We're also fairly sure 9.2 will be the final, because they're making these patches so slow, and with the interim patches, not the major ones, having less content than they did in Legion, that really, if there is a patch 9.2.5, I mean, can you see that being anything other than an epilogue to Shadowlands? I mean, not that they bothered to do an epilogue with Battle for Azeroth, of course. So, Yeah, it's kind of tricky, but I don't see there being a 9.3, because if there's a 9.3, then that's probably going to be 6 to 9 months. Maybe let's just say 6. Let's be charitable and say they got the problem solved. Well, I'll be 6 months after, probably February, March. So then you're getting into the back half of 2022. At what point, or at that point then, like, when's the next expansion? Does Shadowlands end up being, you know, of like
2.5 years, like
2.5 years, or maybe even more? You know, who knows? Because what Blizzard very much seemingly wanted is, you know, launch in August, major patch the following August, and then you know, expansion launch the next August, because August 2016 Legion, August 2018 BFA, Shadowlands got delayed, Shadowlands patches, you know, they've kind of thrown the whole thing off kilter. I mean, even at that, there's just about no way that they'll have that August thing again.
not a chance.
No, like, pretty much not a chance, because, you know, if this patch comes out in February, what do we then expect? Do we expect the patch to come out like I don't know, sometime in February? Then BlizzConline happens, then immediately it's beta, and somehow we crunch out the fastest beta ever. So, you know, I'm still thinking it's going to be October, November, 2022 for 10X.
Yeah, it's like it's almost at the point where Genshin Impact will have an entirely new, like, first number version every time we get a World of Warcraft patch. Which, you know, isn't technically true, but it's
depressing.
You know, they're like, because yeah. So,
Genshin Impact has a team that is way larger than the World of Warcraft team.
Substantially larger. I think, was it I saying to you the other day, like 700, I think they've grown to this team size too?
It was
Something like
700 at a point, but I think it's larger now.
No, it was started off at like 100, 200, then it went to 400. I think it was up to 700 after that.
700 by February 2021. No, you're right.
So it's probably bigger since.
Probably bigger since, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that actually reminds me of talking about February in general. I feel like February is a very, very bad time for World of Warcraft to make any moves.
Actually true.
Because now I just realized someone said there are other games at MMOs. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about all of those games. And February is a fucking bloodbath.
It's, well, Horizon,
Saints Row. Well, I mean, Saints Row might be. We'll see how that goes. But there is, like, basically everything that could make this year has been shifted in around January, February. I mean, Elden Ring in January. That's playtime through to March for a lot of people as well.
Yeah. So that's dates and times. Pretty interesting to figure through, and I imagine there's a bit of me that imagines they've had many meetings about this, but also it seems so obvious what they would be able to do with the time they've got that, yeah, I feel like it's 9.2 and Shadowlands. Ideally give people a 9.2.5 with an epilogue, because seriously, that's really important for a story. We can't just kill this off and get 72 gold again, and then probably, you know, a decent bit into the latter half of next year for 10X. So that's dates.